Welcome to this next episode of the Beloved Miracles Couples Project. Today we welcome a husband, father, master practitioner, and international trainer of neurolinguistic programming. Welcome, William Wood in Utah.
Hey, thanks. It's good to be here. It's an honor to be on your show.
Likewise. I'm speechless all the way from Norway, and thank you. So, William, where does your story begin?
Well, I suppose that my story begins many, many years ago in Ithaca, New York, where I was born. And I was born to two amazing parents. My dad was right at the tail end of his law school. He was in his last set of finals before he graduated with his Juris Doctorate. And my mother was just wrapping up her job and getting ready to take care of me and become a full-time mother. And then we journeyed to FAIRBANKS, Alaska, where I grew up. And I met my wife at the age of 11. So I was 11 years old. She was an old 12 years old at the time. And we went to the same junior high together. We went to church together. We grew up, and we were childhood friends. And then we never really dated until we went to college. We ended up at the same college in Idaho, and later on in Utah. And we didn't start to date really heavily until Utah. And then in Utah, we got married, and now we have 6 kids. My youngest is just an itty bitty, just a little teeny tiny thing. She's just a couple months old, I think 3 months old now, 3.5 months old. And my oldest is in college. She's actually back at the same university where she was born, at the university hospital there, or I guess the community hospital just right across from the university. And here I am. So it's been a long journey, just as I guess learning to work in the context of a family, learning and growing with the family values that I grew up with, and then really learning how to succeed in my own mission and in my own vision for what it is that I'm out to accomplish.
Brilliant. And I heard proud papa in that. I've got a 7-year-old myself, and 6 of them. That's it's a big job, isn't it? I mean, it's
the most important one. Yeah, the most important one. I mean, we think about what we do professionally, and we think about what we do in terms of our career. But you know, what I've dedicated my life to is helping people create incredible breakthroughs in their personal life and their professional life. And I'm really interested in the mind and the heart. And I've been given stewardship over 6 minds and hearts. And my little teeny tiny tots are my most important stewardships that I've got. And so everything that I do professionally pales in comparison with what I do as a father. And as a father, as you know, it's a learning process to figure out how that works, right? When I was single, single and no kids, I had all sorts of ideas about what it meant to raise a family, and all sorts of ideas what it meant to parent, and yet facing the challenges of parenting and learning how to systematically approach parenting in a way to raise awesome kids is a lifelong growing and learning experience. So it's really, really cool experience, and something that has been a major learning journey for me.
Right. And you mentioned systems just now. So undoubtedly with 6 of them, systems begin to arise even more, right? How to do it more efficiently, how to get more done with actually less of an input. What can you speak to, especially to couples and in this modern day, weaving together, as you do, your personal life as well as your professional life using systems?
Yeah. Well, I think that a good system will beat random effort every time. And that's true of I think marriage systems. I think that's true of your own mindset. And I'm going to start there. I'll start with mindset, because I think that all leadership ultimately starts with the mind, and it starts with the heart. And the first person I'm going to enroll in my leadership program is me, right? And I've got to get myself to follow the kinds of actions that I want to take to be able to produce the kinds of results that I'm looking to produce. And there's been some really interesting research done out of the area of positive psychology over the last 20 years or so. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the positive psychology field. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, maybe not at all. But positive psychology is very different than studying disease psychology. Positive psychology looks at people who are thriving and prospering and asks the question, how do they do that? right? How do you get to a place of prosperity? How do you get to a place of being highly functional? And one of the most stunning, one of the most, and I'm blanking on her name right now, Barbara Fredrickson, I think is her name. One of the most stunning learnings comes out of Barbara Fredrickson's work, and I think Seligman's work is worth looking at as well. And basically, here's what she found. She found that individuals prosper when they have 3 exposures to positivity, to genuine, not fake, right? Anybody can put on a fake smile, but the research actually shows like a fake smile or faking positivity is as toxic as negativity in your life. And it'll send people in a downward spiral. So we're talking genuine positivity in a ratio of 3 positive events during a day to every 1 negative event. Now, here's the interesting thing. Now, this is fascinating. And when you get to 5 positive events for every 1 negative event, you tend to spiral up even faster. So we're talking about developing mindset. 80% of the people that I've seen worldwide that have been studied have a positivity ratio closer to 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. Right? Below 1-to-1, people will tend to move into a downward spiral. They'll tend to have their energy collapse. They'll collapse in anxiety or depression or lack of productivity. So here's one of the first observations that she had. She says basically there's this magic ratio that we see across cultures, across peoples, which is this 3-to-1 ratio, 3 positives to 1 negative. But in order to get there, almost everybody is going to have to systematize rituals of happiness to be able to create that kind of positivity. 80% of the people surveyed, baseline positivity scores, 1-to-1 to 2-to-1, right in that range. And so they aren't thriving. And so I'd say if we even just take a look at our own personal lives, if we want to create a thriving inner dimension of our attitude, our well-being, and our mindset, we've got to put into place throughout the day little positivity breaks. Most of us, if we want to really reach that 3-to-1 ratio. And that means systematizing how you approach your mindset. And I'm coming back around to families, and I'm going to come back around to your business as well, because it turns out that as they've studied highly functioning marriages, for example, the best marriages across the world also have a positivity ratio of about 5-to-1. So for every 1 negative event that happens inside of the marriage relationship, there's 5 positive events. And literally just by tracking the ratio of positivity to negativity, you can predict, is that couple thriving or are they dwindling? Well, here's what I can say, and this is backed up by the research. Most couples aren't going to get to a 5-to-1 ratio. They're not going to get to that place of thriving without some kind of systematic approach to building that kind of positivity inside of their marriage. Well, it turns out they've studied this in business too. And in business, if you want to have a thriving business team, the highest functioning business teams across the world operate at a 5-to-1 ratio of positivity to negativity. And the most creative, most productive, highest grossing, right, teams all have this kind of positivity built into them. And so the reason I'm pausing for a minute, as I say, as a parent, if I want to parent my children, if I want to guide my children, I've got to help them. I've got to help create a home. I've got to create a system around the home that builds the kind of positivity that leads to a thriving young child versus a child that is spiraled down into depression or negativity or self-esteem challenges. And how do you do that? You can't do that without a schedule, without routines, and without rituals. And so one of the first things that I'd like to challenge people to do is as they're listening today, and as you're thinking about how you're prospering inside of your marriage, inside of your own mindset, and inside of your own attitude, inside of your business team, and if your wife or your husband's your business partner, gosh, that's or your partner or life partner or whatever, are you living inside of an environment where most of the time you have genuine positive interaction? And if the answer is no, I'm going to recommend that you build a routine. One of the first things that I do is I recommend that people build out an AM PM routine and inside of their mindset. So this is the worksheet that I give people. I have them in my desk so that as I do coaching work, people can, one of the first things I ask people to do usually, if not it's the last thing I ask them to do, I ask them to start to build out routines that for them genuinely produce positivity. So what does that for you? What does it for me? Exercise in the morning. First thing before I look at my phone, before I go and talk to anybody, I meditate for a few minutes. Prayer ends up being a really important part of my system for generating positivity. Reading something inspiring in the morning that gets my mind really moving in the right direction. And then taking time to eat a healthy breakfast. Those would be a few things that I do in the morning, every morning. And when it's a little warmer outside right now, there's snow. I'm sure in Norway, you guys got some snow right now too. A little snowy outside, kind of hard to walk, but a lot of times I'll go take a walk in the middle of the day just to have a little ritual for, noticing nature, enjoying time, maybe listening to some soft music, and on and on. If you go over here, I don't know if you can see it, but on my top shelf in that bookshelf, the one that's closest to my sink there's a flute that sits right on the top shelf, a little wooden Native American flute. And I'm not awesome. I'm no Carlos Nakai, for those of you that are fans, but I do enjoy the flute and I play it reasonably well. And so one of my routines is periodically just to spontaneously pause during the day and to play the flute and really to find that kind of positivity. And as I build mindset routines for the home, one of the things that my wife and I have been working on is literally scheduling out time where the family meets, gathers together, and we have dedicated time towards cultivating and fostering positivity. For years, Monday night has been one of the times when we actually block out everything after about 6 or 7 o'clock for the kids, for ourselves, and we sit down and we hang out with the family. And the whole goal is just to create genuine human connection and play games together. Maybe we learn together, maybe we watch a movie together, but we do something that that binds and gels. And inside of the businesses that I run, I run several businesses. Inside of the businesses that I run, I have contractors that work for me. I have team members, I have business partners, and I also try to make sure that I'm actively scheduling, that it's time blocked out, time just to be together, to create relationship connection, and the positive kind of relationships that ultimately lead to productivity and lead to deep connection and life satisfaction.
Oh, I've taken some good notes. If any of the camera caught me looking the other way, it's just because I'm furiously trying to capture some of what you've said here. I've made note of systematic rituals of happiness. So even a term like that, it just rings, doesn't it, with some awareness of right. I mean, and it leads to the next questions. And I know we're very short of time right now, so I've
got about 2 minutes, and then I got to wrap up here.
I know, so I will not ask them as much as I wish to. And I hope
if you have one question, I'd be happy to answer one more question.
Well, it's the surface one. It's how did this shift for you? Can you speak to your marriage, your parenting as a father, as a husband? Where has this spiraling upward or downward in your own experience shifted in a way that you could just give a nutshell so that someone going through it would actually know that it's turned direction for them? Yeah,
well, sometimes it takes crashing out to figure out how to get happy. And so several years ago, my wife and I completely crashed out, and I would have graded our marriage at something like an F- if I was to, and that's I guess a US grade. So let's see, on a 100-point scale, that would be like a 10% or something like that, right? Maybe a high 7%, and so we crashed out, and we had to really look at what we were doing and what kind of results we were getting, and those results ultimately needed to change. And we got to a place where we had a really serious talk, and we said, we've got to do something different. And we've got to turn this around. And we knew by watching other couples that separating necessarily wasn't the solution, because it seems like couples that separate tend to repeat the same thing with the next partner. And so we figured we've at least got to get ourselves back to like a stable place before we even decide if we're going to like move on or not, but we're like, we got a lot of years invested. Like we had 16, 17 years invested as a couple at that point. We're approaching, actually, we just had our 20-year anniversary. We're going on our 21 years this upcoming year. I don't know. I don't look super old, but we started young, right? We were married at 21 and 22. And so we decided we had to turn things around. And a really important part of that was coming together and starting to talk, and we started to identify that we really didn't have time together that was spent in any kind of positive interaction. And then from there, it was a trial and error of trying different things out that worked for us to be able to build us back up. So I know what it's like to go into a downward spiral. I know what it's like to crash out. And I know that it is possible to turn things around. The amazing part of the story, and this is where we'll probably have to end today, and I wish I had another hour to talk to you about it, but the amazing part of this is really within 3 months, I would have given us, we had been operating at like a low 10%, 7 to 10% in our marriage, maybe like a high of like 11% for a couple of years. And within 3 months, we were averaging 80, 85%. And within a year, we were averaging a 90, 95% in terms of what I would consider our functioning, our happiness, our joy as a couple. And I've watched people do this in their businesses. I've watched them do it with their health. I've watched them do it with their parenting, with every area of the life. It is possible to turn things around. And it just starts with some mindful reflection on what kind of rituals can you schedule into your life? What kind of systems can you build to generate the kind of life that you actually want?
What more can one say? William, the world needs a man's heart. And I invited you on because you clearly are a man who's giving your heart to the world, and very specifically in the role as a couple. And I think the couples around the world that I've met and experienced, myself included, we're almost the unsung heroes. And today you've shared that love in your heart with many couples. And could I get your word we could touch on this again sometime soon? Because we just touched on too many important topics that I feel obligated now to ask you a few more questions about. Could we do this again soon?
We can do it again. I think I'm booked out probably for the next month or two. But if you want to circle back around in a couple of months and schedule a time, I'd love to come back on and chat with you again.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Because as I close these, I often say, together we overcome. And today, William, I feel like that's exactly what you and I have done. A couple of men giving our hearts to the world as best we can. And I just look forward to the feedback and where we can take this next if you're willing to do that. So thank you so much. Saying goodbye from Norway.
Hey, saying goodbye from Utah.